Hi, I'm Jenna Magnuski, Museum Educator at the Little Compton Historical Society. I'm coming to you from outside of our corn crib, which is a really unique building on our property. If you take a look at the bottom, you can see that it's up on stilts. This kept pests from being able to get into the corn harvest. The corn harvest was really key to being able to survive a New England winter, both for the indigenous people and the English settlers. And the English settlers probably remembered that first winter without food stores where they almost starved, and how important corn was to their survival. But how did they grow that corn? You might remember that I mentioned that the Wampanoag people had to teach the English settlers how to grow corn. So let's learn a little bit more about Wampanoag planting. Many of us learned about the Three Sisters planting method when we were in kindergarten or first grade, part of those early lessons on the first Thanksgiving. In the Three Sisters method, corn, squash, and beans are all planted near each other so that each sister plant can help the others grow. The interesting thing about the term the Three Sisters is that it's actually a Haudenosaunee or Iroquois term. The Wampanoag people who taught early English settlers how to plant would have used this method, but they might have called it something different. The first step to prepare for planting was creating mounds. Rather than plow, the Wampanoag people created mounds that were about 4 to 5 inches high, 1.5 feet across, and about 5 feet between them. This seems like it takes up a lot of space, but because each of the plants helped each other grow and thrive, it actually worked out fantastic. The advantage to creating these mounds was that in the early spring, when you first plant the corn, the heat of the sun is absorbed a lot more easily into that mound than it would be if you just planted straight into the ground. And the mounds also helped water runoff so that the seeds weren't flooded out either. Once that corn was hand high, from the heel of your hand to your finger, then you could plant the beans. And you didn't want to plant the beans before the corn was that high because bean plants are actually really aggressive in the way that they climb, and rather than being able to use the corn as a living trellis, they would just rip the corn right down. Beans have two important jobs in the Three Sisters. The first is that while the corn gives them something to climb, they also help anchor the corn in the storms. So when a big windstorm comes through, it keeps the corn from being ripped out of the ground. They also host something called rhizobia in their roots. Rhizobia helps get nitrogen into the soil. Nitrogen is very important for plant growth and is actually a big component of chemical fertilizers. Once the beans have sprouted, then you can plant the squash. Squash has really wide leaves, and it tends to wind its way all through a garden, so it provides ground cover. That ground cover helps make sure that the sun doesn't evaporate all of the water out of the soil, and it also shades weeds. And if the weeds can't get sunlight, they can't grow. So it keeps your garden clear so that those nutrients can go into the Three Sisters like you need them to. There's also a surprise fourth sister. For the Wampanoag people, that fourth sister was sunflowers. North of their garden plot, they would plant sunflowers so that the sunflowers wouldn't block the sun from the Three Sisters plantings. But those sunflowers would have kept birds more interested in the sunflower seeds and attracted pollinators like bees to the patch, which helps the corn to grow more effectively. The Three Sisters didn't just grow well together. They also worked really well together in the human body. The corn provided a wealth of carbohydrates, the beans provided protein, and the squash provided vitamins and minerals that weren't available in the other two plants. And the best thing about these plants was that they could be dried. They could be eaten all year round so that families could not just survive but thrive. And one of the key ways that they prepared that corn? Johnny cakes.